Hey writers and muse daters, it's a pleasure to be here with you again and speak to you about some of the questions you had around publishing your writing. So many of you were really curious about what the process is to publish, and I've seen your questions around certain self-publishing options or traditional publishing options, and just wondering how it is that people end up published. And this is something that I help people with every day. I'm published myself, as you all know, and no spoilers here, but I've got a really big book coming out next month that I'm really excited about. So we'll talk about that in a separate Facebook Live. But today let's talk about you and your questions around the writing process as it leads to publishing, because that's what people were so curious about. And so you have lots of good questions about copywriting your work, or the difference between a publisher and an editor. How do those play together? You sort of hinted at the benefits of traditional publishing versus self-publishing, or vice versa. What's the length of a novel? What should that look like? And I can tell you that it varies by genre, and you know, this one's really important because if you get this wrong, then you're going to look like an amateur. And you know, word length is one of the things that agents are going to ask you for first. It's one of the most important things, and if you're not in the range of acceptable for any given genre, that's slush pile material pretty quickly, because they don't want to deal with writers who don't understand genre lengths. Some other things that you were curious about: how do you find an agent? How do you sell your self-published book? We've seen time and time again, so many self-published authors end up with a garage full of books, and that's a shame, because if your garage is full of books, there's nowhere for your car. But more importantly, your message isn't getting out there, your story's not getting out there, you're not reaching the readers, and that's why you wrote your book, so that you could get that message out there. And it's not the fault of self-publishing, it's not the fault of your garage, it's the fault of a poor marketing plan. So what does that look like? If you're going to self-publish, your book isn't going to just magically sell. That's not how this works. So you need to have a plan in place to make that happen. You know, and furthermore, is this self-publishing company reliable? What does that look like? You know, can you trust them? Are they going to deliver what they've promised, or is what they promised even necessary? How do you know that? And lastly, you know, there's a very specific format for how we write to agents and tell them about our books and ask them for representation. So what does that look like, and how is it done? So you can see there are a lot of questions here, and we can tell from all of these questions that publishing is complicated, right? There are all these different factors that come into it. It's not just the writing process, which is complicated in and of itself, right? Once we get to the point where our manuscript is ready for submission, there are a lot of questions at that point. And as you may know, this can potentially be overwhelming, because there are so many things to take care of, right? The first crossroads is, am I going to self-publish, or am I going to traditionally publish? And then once you figure that out, you know, am I going to go with this company, this company, this company, am I going to go with this agent, right? So there's so many questions on what to do. So the thing is that it doesn't have to be overwhelming. It can be easy with the right support. So imagine if you had someone to answer all of your questions when they came up. If you had someone to say, look, this is my book, this is my genre, you know, what do you think here? Is it better to self-publish? Okay, if I'm going to self-publish, should I do this or this? Imagine if you had that kind of support, someone to get in touch with and help walk you through that process. What would that be like, to have that go-to person, to move away from those frustrating Google searches of how do I, and end up with someone who's an expert in the field, who knows your book, who knows your genre, and who knows the publishing industry inside and out, who has connections in the publishing industry, in publishing houses, in literary agencies, and the editors who work at publishing houses. Imagine if you had someone who could do all of that for you and was intimately familiar with the process. What does that feel like, especially compared to that overwhelm of, excuse me, all of those factors that can get overwhelming and confusing, right? Pardon me with my cute little Winnie the Pooh cup here. If you buy my book, you'll see there's a section in there about Winnie the Pooh and the emotional temperature of a novel. But let's not talk about me. Let's talk about you. You want to move from overwhelm into comfort, right? Of feeling like you know what you're doing. You're not confused anymore. And, you know, just to take a side trip down to one of my favorite topics, neuroscience. When you're confused and overwhelmed and stressed, you are less effective. That's true. That's just how your brain works. And so you're sort of working against yourself when you're living in that overwhelm. So that's just a side note about the process that isn't really working. So if you're looking to publish your writing, doing it in a way that you feel supported and cared for and that you've got answers instead of lots of overwhelming questions is the optimal conditioning for your brain, and it also has better results. So as it turns out, and as you probably know, every manuscript is unique. So, you know, I can sit here and give you lots of general tips about how to do things, like make sure you do this in a query letter but not that. Never say, hey dude, I hope you got that one figured out in the query letter. You know, always make sure that you do your research first on the agent. For example, if they're still working at the publishing or the literary agent that you're sending it to. I've seen all kinds of mistakes with people that I help with their query letters you wouldn't believe. So yeah, I could give you all kinds of those types of general tips, but at the end of the day, it's not going to help you because this is not a cookie cutter process, believe it or not. You know, I mean, think about the kitchen, and I use this analogy a lot. You know, if you all came to me and said, I want to bake a cake, and I said, okay, here's how you bake a cake. Like, get out the flour and get out the vanilla, and you all ended up with this vanilla almond cake, say, right? And then you all bring it home, and somebody has someone in their family who's allergic to nuts. Well, that's not going to work. Somebody has somebody in their family who hates vanilla and will only eat chocolate cake. Well, that's not going to work. Somebody has no idea how to use a measuring cup. They've only ever made a cake from a box. They don't know how to do this. That's not going to work. So you see where I'm going with this. If I just kind of give you some general answers, it's not going to serve all of you and where you are, right? I'm just kind of throwing things out there, and I'm doing a disservice to you. And that doesn't sit well with my integrity because I really want to help you, the individual writer, to find the very best solution for you. And I will tell you right now that that's why I get amazing results, because I listen to what writers need and then we go and we get that thing. And that's why they have so much success. And if you don't believe me, you can check the posts in the Facebook group. People are posting every day about their successes and the things that have happened through their work in the writing gym. So I am not going to give you a recipe for a vanilla almond cake, but I am going to help you to find the very best cake to give your family. So follow my analogy. I would love to speak with you about your individual, unique manuscript and what is the very best publishing solution for your unique manuscript. And I'm available. I've made some availability. I've got a little bit at the end of this week now, but tons next week. I've opened up some times, especially for you guys who are here listening right now, watching this video. I'll post it on a replay so you can see it in case this isn't a good time for you. And we can talk about what's going to be unique to your book, your genre, what kind of agent you need to look for, or whether self-publishing is going to work better for you, what kind of publishing house you want to target your writing to, what kind of self-publishing company you might be looking for, what kinds of elements you want to make sure to include in your marketing plan so you don't end up with that garage full of books. I don't want that to be you. So here's what you can do. We can talk one-on-one. Very best way to get in touch with me is to follow the link that I'm going to throw into the comments section. That way you can get right onto the phone with me. We'll talk about where your writing is, where you want it to go, and how you can get to publishing for your manuscript. So I can give you a recipe that's unique to you. All right. I look forward to speaking with you. I can't wait to hear about your manuscript.